I honestly never thought I would be the kind of person to cut off my entire family, but after what they did, I'm left wondering if there's even a drop of humanity left in them. How do you look at your own child, who is grieving the loss of his only son, and tell him that his dead child's future is less important than a party? My parents didn't just skip my son's funeral. They treated his death like an inconvenience, and then, without a shred of shame, they demanded the $850,000 trust fund I had set up for him so they could fund my sister's dream wedding. I'm sitting here in an empty house, surrounded by my son's toys, and I have to ask you all, was I wrong for telling them they are dead to me, or would you have done the exact same thing in this nightmare? To understand how we got to this point, you have to understand the dynamic of my family. I've always been the provider and the stable one, while my younger sister, Chloe, has always been the golden child. My parents, Robert and Diane, have spent their entire lives making sure Chloe never had to face a single consequence or struggle. When I worked 2 jobs through college to avoid debt, they were busy taking out a second mortgage to pay for Chloe's semester abroad in Europe, where she didn't even earn a single credit. I never complained because I loved my sister, and I wanted to be the bigger person. I eventually built a very successful career in software development and made some smart investments early on. By the time I was 30, I was doing very well for myself. Then came Leo. My son, Leo, was the light of my life. He was born with a heart condition that we knew would make life difficult, but he was the most resilient, joyful kid you could ever meet. From the moment he was born, I started a trust fund for him. I wanted to make sure that no matter what happened to me, he would be taken care of, especially with his medical needs. Over the years, through my contributions and some very lucky market moves, that fund grew to about $850,000. It was his safety net, his future, and his security. My parents were never particularly involved with Leo. They'd show up for Christmas, take a few photos for Facebook to look like doting grandparents, and then spend the rest of the time talking about Chloe's latest business venture or her new boyfriend. It hurt, but I focused on my son. Then, 4 months ago, the unthinkable happened. Leo's heart finally gave out. He was only 8 years old. I felt like my entire world had been ripped apart. I remember calling my parents from the hospital, sobbing so hard I could barely breathe, and my mother's first response wasn't "I'm coming over." It was, "Oh dear, this is going to be so hard on Chloe. She's so sensitive about death." I was floored, but I was too numb to fight. I spent the next week in a fog, planning a funeral for a child who should have had decades of life ahead of him. When the day of the funeral arrived, I waited. I waited at the church, looking at the door, hoping to see my parents and my sister walk through. They never showed up. I sat in the front row alone. My wife had passed away from complications during Leo's birth, so it was just me. My friends were there, thank God, but my own flesh and blood were nowhere to be found. I found out later, through a social media post, that they were at a wedding gown consultation for Chloe. She had gotten engaged just 2 weeks after Leo passed, and apparently the only appointment the designer had was during my son's funeral service. They didn't even call. They sent a text 3 hours later saying, "Thinking of you today, but Chloe really needed us. We'll talk soon." I didn't reply. I couldn't. I spent the next month in a deep depression, barely eating, just trying to survive the silence of my house. Then, last week, I got a call from my father. He didn't ask how I was doing. He didn't apologize for missing the funeral. He went straight to the point. He told me that Chloe had found her dream venue, an estate in Italy, and that the wedding was going to cost upwards of $200,000, plus another $100,000 for travel and guest accommodations. He then had the audacity to say, since Leo, well, since he won't be needing that trust fund anymore, we think it's only fair that you use it to give your sister the wedding she deserves. It's what family does, right? It's not like you're using the money for anything now. I felt a coldness wash over me that I have never felt before. I asked him if he was serious, and he got defensive, saying that I was being selfish by sitting on a mountain of cash, while my sister was struggling to pay for her special day. He even said that Leo would have wanted his aunt to be happy. That was the breaking point. I hung up on him, but the messages didn't stop. My mother started calling, crying about how I was ruining Chloe's life and how the money was just sitting there. Chloe herself messaged me saying I was bitter and that I shouldn't take my grief out on her happiness. They have no respect for my son's memory, and they certainly have no respect for me. I'm currently at a crossroads. I have the legal right to the money, obviously, as it reverts to me as the trustee. But my family is making me out to be a monster to our entire extended family. They're telling everyone I'm hoarding money out of spite. So that's the situation I was in, and I had to make a choice. Before I tell you what happened next and how I handled the final confrontation, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have given in just to keep the peace, or would you have done what I did? I decided that I was done being the family doormat. I didn't just say no, I went nuclear. I invited my parents and Chloe over to the house, pretending I wanted to discuss the distribution of funds. They showed up with smiles on their faces. Chloe even brought wedding brochures to show me. We sat down in the living room, and my dad started talking about wire transfers. I let him talk for 5 minutes before I held up my hand. I told them that I had already decided what to do with the $850,000. I told them that since they weren't there for Leo's life or his death, they had no right to his legacy. I informed them that that very morning I had signed the paperwork to donate the entire trust fund to the pediatric cardiology unit at the hospital that tried to save Leo's life. Every single cent was gone. I'd established a scholarship and a research fund in Leo's name. The look on their faces was priceless. Chloe burst into tears, not for Leo, but because her Italian wedding had just vanished. My father turned purple and started screaming that I stole that money from the family. My mother called me heartless and said I was dead to them. I stood up, opened the front door, and told them that they were never welcome in my home again. I told them that if they ever contacted me again, I would file a restraining order for harassment. I watched them walk out to their car, still screaming at me, and for the first time in months, I felt a sense of peace. I blocked all of them on everything. I even sent a mass email to our extended family with screenshots of their demands and the proof of the donation, so everyone knew exactly why I was cutting them off. The backlash from their side has been intense, but I don't care. That money was meant for my son's future, and since he didn't get one, it's going to make sure other kids like him do. My sister had to cancel her Italian wedding and is now having a small ceremony at a local park. And my parents are reportedly furious that I won't pay for their retirement either. I've realized that being family is a privilege, not a right, and they lost that privilege the second they prioritized a wedding dress over a funeral. I'm starting therapy next week to deal with the grief and the trauma of my family's betrayal, but I know I made the right choice. I feel like Leo would be proud of me for standing up for him, even if he isn't here to see it. It's a hard lesson to learn that the people who are supposed to love you the most can be the most toxic. But once you cut that cord, the air gets a lot easier to breathe. I'm going to spend the rest of my life honoring my son's memory in ways that actually matter, far away from the greed and entitlement of the people I used to call my parents. I hope this story serves as a reminder to anyone out there dealing with entitled family members. You don't owe them your peace, and you certainly don't owe them your legacy. Stand your ground, even when it feels like the whole world is against you. Like this video if you were on my side and think I did the right thing by donating the money. Subscribe for more stories like this, where we tackle the messiest parts of life and family drama. Share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section. I'm curious to see if anyone thinks I went too far. I'll see you all in the next story.